think we're recording now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where are you today?
I am in the Chicago suburbs.
Of Illinois.
Yes, of
I'm in
Illinois.
Charlotte, North Carolina, and springtime pollen is everywhere and headed your way. So,
Yeah, you've got a little bit of a head start on the greenery than we do here.
yeah. Are you guys, is there still snow?
No, no,
It's
we
not
hardly get any
that
snow
far.
this whole season, so it
Okay.
was a pretty dry winter.
Yeah. So if you could take a moment and introduce yourself. Tell me what you
Sure.
do, how
So
you got here.
I am Jason Rostar. I work for a national firm, architecture and engineering firm, HED. I'm the corporate practice technology leader for the firm. I manage the practice technology team that's trying to help the architects and engineers adopt modern workflows, tools, ways of delivering our projects for our clients. My background is in architecture. I started off as just a project architect type of person and then transitioned 15 years ago or so into the technology space. So really it's about what I try to focus on is how do we help the architects and engineers be as efficient as possible using modern tools, data, connectedness to help our project teams deliver projects in an integrated way.
Of all the session proposals that came across for the roundtable event, yours stood out as not being about technology
Mm-hmm.
directly. It was more about curating curiosity.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah, chat about that.
one of the challenges that I see is that people are very um, stuck on this idea that they can only do what they know how to do, right?
Yeah.
And when I learned new tools, I was very curious. I was smashing buttons, I was breaking things, figuring out like what worked and what didn't work. And then you would go down a certain path, and then you would reverse and try a different way until you found a way that worked. And I think that there's this framework in the current profession that makes that difficult, right? Staff
Mm.
are very much meant to do things in a certain way, and there's not a lot of wiggle room for them to try and explore new things. There's a bit of a backlash from past explorations, right? Where people might want to go down a completely different path, a different tool set, a different ecosystem that cause a lot of inefficiencies over the years. And so a lot of firms, especially big national firms, try to really streamline how they deliver projects. I can understand that might be difficult for project teams to try to explore new ways of working. Um, but there's lots of opportunities every single day of like, well, something doesn't work, if you got an error message that you weren't expecting, or something you didn't get the results you were looking for. Like instead of going and asking somebody for help, is saying, "Hey, this broke. Go fix it for me." Like, what can you do as a professional to try a new way of working, or to try a different path, or to try to like even make something that you're doing 10 minutes faster than the way that you did it before. That's the kind of
Yeah.
curiosity that I think is lacking right now. But I think that people are just very much working in the way that they've always worked. And as a result, the new technology trends are kind of passing people by because they're not open to new ways of working, new ways of thinking.
We were chatting about this before and talking about the pace of change. You brought up this idea that when people are stressed, uh, not only do they tend to do things the way they've done them, but there's also stress from something else, unmeaningful workflow or purposeless workflow.
Yeah, so,
What did you
so
mean?
there's been some studies, and Adam Grant, who's a organizational psychologist, talked about this in a recent podcast. That this idea of burnout is happening not because people are overwhelmed by how much they have to do, which I'm sure that is probably a part of it, but at the company level, there's a lot of burnout occurring because staff are it's not clear what they should be working on, how they should be working on it, and so they go down a path, and then they might invest a couple weeks into working on something, and then they're being told, "Oh, that was a wrong. Do it again. Do it a different way." And if that kind of energy that's being uh, expended, and then having to like back up and do it again, that is causing a different level of burnout, or a different type of burnout than we've seen before. And a lot of it just comes down to lack of planning, lack of clear communication, and a lack of clear expectations of what staff are supposed to be doing on their projects. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about is slow down to go fast, right? So, planning your projects, talking about it, setting those expectations, setting the goals, so that everybody's on the same page, so that you're not generating that rework, so that you're not having that burnout from staff.
It seems like if you have a lack of curiosity, it may also be the result of a lack of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you need to have a framework in order for curiosity to be promoted and curated. And if you don't have that framework of clarity, it's hard to be curious. You don't even know if you're being curious in the right direction.
Right. I think a really important part of this is having a solid foundation for what you're supposed to be doing, right? Having a very clear expectation of here's what the baseline should look like. A lot of times people want to like grab a shiny object and go like, use a new piece of technology to try to solve a problem that isn't really a problem. If you know what the baseline is supposed to be, then you can do some controlled experiments or some controlled trying new things and being curious about new ways of working, and then compare that to the baseline, right? And without that foundation, you don't have anything to compare to know if it is better or if it's just going in another direction.
How do you distinguish between being curious with purpose as opposed to just being distracted?
You go to every conference in our industry, you open up any social media, LinkedIn, whatever, you're seeing all of these people touting these really exciting, shiny objects is what I call them, right? Because they are really cool and exciting. There's lots of opportunities to try new things and new tools and AI and, all of those things that are out there right now. But how do you do that with a purpose, with an intent to actually improve your day-to-day, improve your workflows, as opposed to just make something cool, right? And there's nothing wrong with making something cool. It's definitely a fun pastime, right? To just go and smash some buttons and stick things together and see, what workflows might work, right? And there's definitely some cool experiments that you can play with, connecting different technologies together. But in the environment of a professional firm, right? Like it's important that what you're doing on one project can relate to and tie back to or progress with your coworkers on other projects and other offices and locations, right? You can't just be in a silo on your own when you're ultimately trying to progress a large project forward.
It sounds like you're trying to find a way for people to be curious, but sometimes if you want to be curious about something, it's like, hey, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
And other times you want to be curious. It's like, okay, go down that rabbit hole a bit, but there has to be some accountability.
I'd say internally, we have a process that allows our staff to do just that, right? Where it's like, hey, I have this idea, and they can apply for an R&D grant. They'll be assigned some hours to be able to do it during work hours, but ultimately they're going to be a corporate leadership advisor. And then they're going to have to do a presentation when they're done, right? Like, here's what I learned. Is this viable for our firm or not?
They're going to have to give back.
Right.
Like, yep.
And it could very well be that, this isn't viable. It's not, the technology is not there yet, or we need to dig deeper or something, right? But then at least we have some tangible data that we can use to either move forward or set it aside, right? And that's the part that's important, at least at a professional firm level, is there has to be that sanctioned curiosity, I guess is a way of looking at it, right? How do you do this within the framework of the ecosystem of the foundational elements that your firm already has in a way that can maybe benefit the firm in a big picture as opposed to you as an individual?
You surprised me with your submission around kind of culture and psychology and curiosity. And can you mention that podcast again that you were referring to before?
Yeah, it was Think Again by Adam Grant.
Okay.
It was an episode from a couple of weeks ago. It was really interesting.
Okay, so if you looked it up today, just go back a couple of weeks and you'll find that episode that you're referring to.
Yeah, it was about burnout and the culture, and it was an interesting take because it was more about the communication and everything about burnout as opposed to the workload that everybody kind of assumes is tied to burnout.
Right. It's hard. It's work without purpose that creates the burnout.
Yep.
Look, this is great, and I look forward to seeing you 4 weeks from well, about 4 weeks from today.
Yeah,
And, we'll all be amongst friends. So this is going to be a great conversation to have.
I'm
Thank you
looking
so
forward
much.
to it.